Okay, I'm going to call this meeting of the Education Committee of the Representative Town Meeting to order. We're going to follow the agenda. Before we just start on the budget, is there, can I just ask if there's anyone who's new to this committee to just kind of take 30 seconds and introduce yourselves? And there may be some new people, but maybe they're not on this call yet. Anyone? I thought we had some new people. Okay. Okay, well then look, moving to the budget, unless anyone has objection, what I was going to suggest we do is move through by each RC. We've got that Google Docs that we were using for questions and comments that we had previously shared. What I was what I did with that last version was deleted all the questions that we had submitted. And sorry, I've got to get someone. Deleted questions that we'd submitted, and I'd left the questions on there that were largely from Peter and Clara that had been added after the 11th. So what I would propose we do is just keep that sort of the Google Docs going as a sort of live document. We'll submit it to the administration after this meeting. And I was also going to suggest that we hold until we've gone through all the RCs, any commentary or questions specifically around open choice or the bring your own device initiative. And it's not to say we don't want to talk about those things, but there's a special meeting where they're specifically going to spend more time talking about those. So I just thought it might, I mean, we certainly want to take the time to sort of get our questions out there, but since everything beyond that has already been presented, I suggest we just we stick with again with the RCs. And Meg, you're here. Are you okay with sort of being the master of the document?
Yep.
Great. Okay, so I'm just, if no objection, I'm just gonna.
Don't get that started because you're not going to get it finished tonight.
Julie, we can hear the conversation with the kids, which I so empathize with. Okay, so with that, Peter, I know you'd had a couple of comments that are in the document on the superintendent's message. Does anyone else have anything in that before we? I'm just going to go tab by tab.
Ed, should
Yes.
we take attendance? So
well, it's automatic here on the yes, but I'm going to screenshot. Actually, I'm just going to screenshot the participants. Everybody should be able to see who's there.
Aren't we 7 members of the RTM Education only so far?
No, I think we're more. I think we got more.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
There's
7,
9.
8, and 9.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
think
9.
Yeah.
Okay, anyone, superintendent's message? Goals and objectives. Enrollment projections. Personnel. I feel we're moving very fast. Not what I was expecting. Okay, let's start with that, then we'll switch to the high school. Any?
Can we go a little bit back to projections? Is
Absolutely.
there any way to find, and I probably this is beyond budget, but with the housing developments that have come to town, Avalon or Kensett or whatever it is that has brought kids to the schools, do you think is there any way to find out kind of like an average or the percentage that kids do go to the public school as opposed to public and private? So with all those incoming developments, I don't know if there's any way to estimate how many kids are gonna join the public schools or not.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. And Meg, if she'll include some comments. I think that was one of the reasons for the demographer, where they wanted to, spend that $10,000
Yeah.
and basically to just do some estimating, because we have, I have heard that the middle school is at capacity, whatever that means, and I know we've had a lot of success here, or plan to sort of get out of the portables. So yes, I think it is valid to understand, if we were to have 200 housing units built, and we assume it's an average of 0.5 kids, what happens if it's 1.5 kids? So that the town and the administration is aware of what those trends might be. So
Because I know I'm in Kansas, so I'm in one of the developments that brought a bunch of kids. And what I see from living here is that I know all of them definitely went to the elementary schools, but once they hit middle school and high school, a big proportion of them are in private schools.
yeah, and well, actually, and I think your Kensett would be maybe even a good example to, they certainly had projections that were presented to P&Z when the development was done. They thought they were going to have this many kids going to the school. How many actually? And whether it was the elementary school, the middle school, I think that would be, really, really interesting to know. So, yeah.
I mean, if we're
Number-
talking, go ahead, Janet.
The number of 2-bedroom apartments that are planned is certainly a very accurate way of thinking that there would be children there, as opposed to how many 1-bedroom and studios.
Yeah, but I think, but Janet, and I don't disagree with you on the 2-bedroom, but, if you think about someone's going to move into our districts because this housing is cheaper, and they really think it's important to go to school, or maybe it's going to be a sort of split family with mom one place, dad in another.
Yeah.
Someone could put it's not like the fire marshal says you can't have a kid there just because it's a 1-bedroom. It could still be a person living there.
But frequently, when there's one dad or one mom, there's a requirement for 2 bedrooms.
No, I get it. I guess I'm just making the point that someone could choose to move into the area if the schools are, better than their alternative, and we should just sort of understand what happens if that's a trend, because it certainly changes the numbers. And maybe admittedly something I would not have focused on until people started talking about the middle school being at capacity.
Yeah, well, Ed, I remember when we were on the education committee years ago, we talked about Kensett. And as I remember it, they really underestimated the number of kids that came from Kensett, like by a real factor.
Yeah, no, that was definitely true, because it was sold and advertised and whatever as an elder community, and it really wasn't. But on the other, and I would say probably out of the 60 in that end houses, I think there's like 30% that have kids. Everything else is older and definitely no kids. So yeah, okay.
The other question I would have about the developments is particularly on Heights Road. So you have over there, you have the Avalon that was originally, those kids were originally at Hindley. Oh no, they were originally at Holmes.
Yes.
And then within a year or two, they were redistricted into Tokenique because Holmes was too crowded. Tokenique was a new building, so they moved them all there. And so now you're talking about a stretch of developments that are near the Avalon. Do those kids go to Tokenique? Do they go to Holmes? Do they go to Hindley? So I think there are a lot of questions about where those kids even go. And then with the Corbin district, your assumption is that they're at Tokenique, but it depends on how many kids are there. It's a big question on developments, I think, for an elementary school level.
And they're trying to, planning and zoning wants to approve apartments over here by Selleck's Woods also, which if that comes to pass,
Oh,
we're
that's
going to have.
right. Those are 60 apartments, potentially 60 apartments over there. Yes.
Exactly.
There seem to be a lot of pushback against the Parklands apartments, but I haven't heard anything.
Absolutely.
So are you all on the Morgan Stanley Zoom or on
Cornell, Clara.
You're
This is all Cornell. Yeah.
All right, now I have it. Okay.
We're in the Ivy Leagues now.
No recording in Morgan Stanley. I would get fired. so.
Can someone send Jen Raymond the link again for the Cornell one? Apologies, just like,
Okay,
I
I
can't
will.
multitask that much, thanks. Okay, anything else on enrollment? Okay. So then we're to the high school, and I guess, look, as we're going through this, I mean, it's kind of a pain because we're not in person. We can't put all this paper out, and everybody's got their own screens, and the questions and answers were provided, were sent on multiple documents. So it's going to be hard for folks to bounce around, but I guess really, if you've got your questions when we get to that RC, we should kind of be getting them out there. And apologies, I got someone else who's trying to get in, so I'm trying to answer her too.
Recording in progress.
Okay, RC2 Fitch.
Wait, sorry, I thought you were gonna do the high school first. And that you were
I
gonna-
did. Nobody had any comments, so I was moving on. Sorry. Yes.
Okay,
high
sorry.
school.
I thought you were trying to bring someone in. I didn't say anything.
Sorry. High school. It's all you.
Okay. Thank you. So I just had a question. It's just sort of a theme that I've noticed in the budget this year. It's just like it's a number of small incremental additional amounts, which over the course of all these RCs is just amounting to a lot. But I'm not really seeing like the specific value added in some of these requests. And I know for RC1, the only question we really submitted was for the bursar, but I wanted to know, one of the questions I had was on the exchange program, why the budget for this past year was 10,000. If we used it, where did it go? Because clearly no one traveled. And why is it 17,000 for the coming year?
They explained that in the meeting, and there was no exchange program this past year. That was the China exchange, right? And
right.
then,
No, they did explain it, saying that it's for the exercise of like receiving people and such. But one of the questions that was posed was what the interest is in that, how robust a program is it? And is this really where we want to put dollars towards? $17,000 against a budget of 110 million is a drop in the bucket. I recognize that. But when you have multiples of small increments like this across all these RCs, it does add up. So if this is a budget request that is not crucial to delivering high quality education at DHS, maybe we put it on the back burner this year, because we're starting off at a really high increase overall, and some of it is necessary and some of it is mandatory, but something like this, I think, which is a privilege, but not, critical to a good high school education, I wonder if this is not the year to do that.
So can I just, I have no opinion either way regarding the China exchange, but I will say in terms of interest, COVID aside, it's a class at the high school and not every kid gets into it. You have to fill out forms, you have to do an interview. It is a highly competitive class to actually get into. And in the past, until COVID happened, it was a highly coveted class. So in terms of interest, it was a class that when it existed, that there was a high interest in, just to let people who may not be familiar with it, just to let them know.
and we just approved those travel for the middle school. I think this is the only opportunity that kids in the high school get to travel. It's the China program. I don't think there's any other exchanges the way that we just approved, like, all the ones in the Middlesex. So I do think it's very valuable as an opportunity for the kids to get out of Darien and see other things. So I would definitely consider it very valuable to the kids in the high school.
I agree with Carolina that it's important to include the program, but I also agree with Meg that when they were talking about, when Ellen Dunn was talking about some of the costs, I think she said $7,000 were to be earmarked for welcome events. And that just felt a little, a little much. But I agree, Carolina, that it's a great program and to be supported.
I can see that it's a good program, but, and it has been very popular, but considering the COVID restrictions, the difficulty getting visas, possibly, I wouldn't be sorry to see it on the back burner for another year. I just think that, it doesn't have the same priority that it once did. I hope we can return to it when things are safer.
But just to be clear, I would assume they're looking to budget for it, but like if the program doesn't come off, they're not going to spend the money.
Right, but people are taxed on the money. You know what I'm saying? It goes in the budget.
Yeah.
People are taxed and, they can always find someplace else to spend it, but I don't know. I just would like to see a more conservative approach this year.
Yeah, well, I think, maybe one, to Meg's point on the presentation of the budget, and this is, I don't know, some of you guys on this have been around longer than me, so you've been sort of seeing the same thing, but like, I personally don't find this presentation all that useful. It lends itself to our spending a lot of time talking about relatively small amounts of money. I recall last year, the board the board in particular, I think spent a tremendous amount of time talking about whether they bought one wrestling mat or two. Yes. And because it is, again, I don't really know what zero-based budgeting is, but it seems to really be, let's just talk about the changes from the prior year. And so you end up seeing, in some cases, small amounts of money because there were only small changes. Whatever, it's what they're presenting, so that's what we have to respond to. But it does seem to me that we can get caught up talking about relatively small things and then, wait, that's a lot of people that are being added to the budget. What is that cost? And anyway, that's my 2 cents. Anything else on the high school?
So in the answers that they gave us, Jonathan, you have in the answers that they gave us, there is.
Does someone have two screens going?
Jan Raymond does.
Jan does. Jan has two screens going.
Yeah, I'm sorry, we had a problem.
I'm trying to, Dan.
Sorry. I'm sorry, I was having trouble signing in and I got in on my phone and the computer at the same
Ed,
time.
you can mute her.
Yes, which one?
Not the one with the video, the one, I think it's gone. So what I was saying, in the Q&A that you sent a couple of days ago, it says that out of the
Thanks, Nally.
102003, which is the program, other student activities, 7,000 of that is for the China exchange, not the full 17. So the answer, it's there. It says, yes, there is 7,000 in RC1 for China exchange, in other student activities. This covers transportation to the airport for the students and incidental expenses for hosting the China students in Darien. So I don't believe the full 17 is China.
Okay. Anyone else with comments on the high school?
This is Clara.
Oh, okay, go on, Clara. Go.
I was going to say, I had asked a question earlier about how much would be added if the bring your own device does not go through. And I think I found the answer is 200,000. It's on page 10 in the introductory part of the budget. So you can withdraw that question.
Okay, Claire, and what I had suggested is we would run through all the RCs and leave open choice and bring your own device to the end because they.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Because partly because there is a meeting that they're going to spend more time on,
right.
And we could obviously take a long time to discuss it as well. So let's get.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
And I have a Google Doc open, the one that I created from that day, and there are some questions on there that have been added well, one is added today, but it has been added since we got, it looks like since we got answers from the district. So
Right, Therese, so I took the document and I basically took off the questions that we had asked.
right.
And I left it as
So you left-
what has
and so-
not been asked. So none of those
Okay.
questions have been submitted to the administration.
Right. So should I, does everybody
Meg-
have them? Should we
Meg-
read them out or anything?
Meg well, everybody has it because it's on that Google Doc.
Okay.
So people wanted to read it could, and Meg is
I'm testing room
editing
4
as we
and I need
go.
a pen.
Okay.
Okay, Fitch, RC2. Middlesex, RC3.
I have a few thoughts, more than a few, about the Genius Hour of the packaged. It's a packaged idea. And along with what you said, Ed, about not spending a lot of time on a small amount of money, it will cost $16,000 and more. And from what I understand, having had some conversations about this, nobody had heard of it or knew it was coming. And the presentation was directionless, and how many people are going to do it. And I think it's just one of those things that needs a lot more explanation. And I would suggest that money can be better well spent on Middlesex than on this additional program.
One of the things that I did read in all the Q&A, in all the package with all the questions that Ed said, there's several questions answered about that program in the Q&A.
Yes.
And it says it's for every kid. So it's all the kids in the school. It will be one of the flex periods once a month for everybody. And they explain. So what more detail do you want, Janet, is what I'm trying to
Carolina, well, that was, I think the question I answered was the question that I asked, but I don't know if what I was asking was, and maybe this was similar to Janet's question, like how many kids are actually using it? And so what I understood, it was open to everyone.
There's no kids using it because it doesn't exist. It will be for every kid in the middle school.
Sorry, but so how many do we think 10 kids are going to use it, or we think 500 kids are going to use it? That was kind of my question, is like, how many people do they think are actually going to show up? Is it $1 a kid, or is it $100 a kid?
They have no idea. I feel that I read all the material and I understand all that. I don't have any more questions. I just think that there's not enough information and at the moment to include it.
Yeah, well, I think you may be right that they have no idea, but I think that somebody must have a sort of an expectation. So I wonder, Meg, if we could, I mean, if you can kind of work something in between what Janet was asking, what I was saying.
I think it's for every kid. From what I'm reading in the answers, it's all students are going to will go to Genius Hour. It's not optional.
It's required?
Yeah,
It's not
it's one of the
reading
flex
it.
periods. And
No,
then
it's not required, Carolina. It's not required. It's an option that's available in Flex once a month to students who want student-directed learning. And I echo Janet's sentiments on this one. I mean, for $15,000, again, it's not a large sum of money, but there's not a single line item. There's no specific, is it going to be science fair related? Is it going to be music related? Is there a presentation at the end? Is there a concert? Does it get somehow adopted into classes that are relevant to it? How is it orchestrated? What's the selection process?
Or is it just study period?
Yeah, so
it says there is a presentation at the end. There will be a fair at the end.
Yes, we know all that, and it's still not satisfactory. I understand one of the compelling reasons to have it is that Westport has it. Other than that, it hasn't been explained, other than those explanations that were given that were.
It does say all students will participate in Genius Hour during Flex. It doesn't say it's optional. It does say all students.
But Carolina, I think we members of this committee, like, I don't, you may be right, but I don't know that, and I agree with you, that's what it says, but that's not what I thought. I kind of thought it was optional. So I don't, maybe we can just kind of look to clarify that a bit more, because again, it is for supplies, it's a lot of supplies. $15,000 buys a lot of pencils.
So
That's
I
not
think it's
the
fair,
point
I
so
think it's fair to ask for more information on it, but
Yeah.
I would hate the idea of nixing a potential new program at the middle school, which hasn't had a lot of new stuff happen in years.
But Teresa, remember, we don't nix programs.
No, I know.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is, like, I think it's fair for us to ask for more information about it.
Yeah, and for everyone, just again, as a reminder, right? When we get to capital items, we can go line by line, but when we're basically gonna approve a budget
Right,
that's gonna come to us, and the process to make it smoother with the RTM is we've got all this involvement early on. So if we can say we don't like this program and we want to spend $15,000 less, but if the district wants to find or the Board of Ed wants to find $15,000 from someplace else, they're going to do it. So obviously our opinions matter, but.
And I think that's a good reminder for everybody on the committee, some who may be new, we do not have line item control over the operating side.
no, we don't.
To remind people of that.
But sorry, Claire. I was going to say people are
No,
watching
that's it.
this
Go ahead.
meeting and they know we're asking a lot of questions about this. So
Yeah. One of the things I wanted
Specific
more
question?
information about the Genius Hour also. I think in reading about it, it appears to be something that employers use. It's sort of a generic term for letting people come in with a lot of creative ideas. But when I read back the consultant's report on the IDEA, the gifted program, they wanted to provide a little more opportunity to all the students. And I was, to participate in creative work. And I was wondering if this was kind of an answer to the consultant's recommendation. So I would just like to include
Well,
that.
Clara, that helps me a lot because I think you raise an interesting point. I don't know the link between IDEA and this program.
There is no link. There is no link.
Well, I think we need to ask that.
That's
There's not. No.
Janet, let me just finish my thought, which is if Janet and Clara and others have specific questions, can't we word those in such a way that are you just opposed, Janet?
No,
Then let's put it-
my
let's-
questions are not unanswered. I read all the same stuff. I think, look how much time we're spending on it. I just think that there's a lot more that we need to know, just what everybody's saying.
But what? That's what I want to know. What is it?
Things that other people spoke of. One of the people I talked to assumed that everyone in the gifted program would be in this program. Hardly. The name of the program leaves something to be desired from many people's point of view. Now that's that. I'm not opposed to it.
but you've got serious questions about it. So
Questions about it, yeah.
And look, it's fair. I mean, there's a description here that sounds good, but when you dig further, it's like we're all obviously not understanding it the same way. So yeah.
And I understand, I'm not that articulate on flex time and what the teachers need to teach during flex time, but it can be a lot, I understand.
Yeah.
That's
sorry.
one more program for them to learn to teach.
Yeah. Well, what school, when this whole concept of the outdoor classroom, was that at the middle school?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so I know it's not in the budget. This is a question that I guess is more about process, and I know that there were some people in the board meeting that said, oh, why are we talking about this? It's not in the budget. I know I said we're going to talk about open choice later. Dr. Adley, brought that up a couple of times in the year. And then there were people that felt we should be having a special meeting on it. I guess my question is, from a process standpoint, how, I think the administration and the board should have a process that they're going to do to introduce these concepts and then follow it. If they're going to talk about things that might be on the agenda for the future, like the outdoor classroom, to me, this is a perfect time to do it, even if it's not in the budget, and then we're engaging on it. If it's not the time to do it and they want to talk about it during the year, then we shouldn't really be faulting the administration for putting something in the budget that hasn't really been discussed before. But I just find it a little bit, I don't want to say confusing, that there are some things that we talk about now, but they're not in the budget, and then other things that are in the budget and maybe they have or have not been talked about before.
So
So
maybe we shouldn't talk about it anymore.
yeah, maybe. So I don't think there's anything for us to really say on the outdoor classroom because there's no talking about, the money for it. I suppose if it's in the budget for next year, then we're not going to be in a position to say, well, we didn't know about it because it raised it a year prior. I just think it'd be helpful from a spending standpoint, since we only look at this budget once a year, for there to be a bit more of a planning process embedded within it.
Alan suggested that it could be something that's contributed to in the next year's budget.
Which I think is but even if it was something that we were funding, I guess I'm just saying that, the budget tends to be it's this year's budget. I think we would be better off if we saw more trends, and capital spending is something that we look out for a couple of years. Enrollments, we look out for a couple of years. Some things last more than one budget cycle. So that's my 2 cents on the outdoor classroom. Anything else on Middlesex? Okay, Hindley.
Just to clarify, going back to the Genius Hour or whatever you want to call it. On the document that says budget questions January 11th, 2022, it explains Flex. How are they using Flex? And how would they modify it? And it's offered for every kid. So it's definitely, it's not optional. From this answer, you also read that it's not optional.
Well, Carolina, I'd like to hear the administration say that it's not optional. Like, I just can't believe they're going to require kids to sit there and do things that are inquiry based, but if so be it.
You can ask. I'm just saying it's in 2 different spots that says that it's not optional.
Where did you say the answers were, Carolina?
It's in the FY23 budget questions, BOE January 11th PDF.
January 11th. Okay.
And it's in question 8. So it says, how is flex time currently used, and the breakdown of what flex looks on a daily basis, and how will there be available to add the Genius Hour and how it would work.
Okay,
so
thank you.
What was the capstone program required by everybody, for everybody?
Yes.
Okay, that's a good clue that it would be.
And to me,
everybody.
Inquiry Day, by the way, it's like going to school and learning stuff is an inquiry, based activity. So I don't see the difference between one or the other, particularly.
Between what and what?
No, that some people are saying this is inquiry based, the Genius Hour. For me, all education is inquiry based. So
I don't know what those buzzwords mean particularly. I just know that it's a packaged program.
Okay.
We can move on. Sure.
So let's, I'd say, RC's 5, 7, 8, 9, all the elementary schools.
I have a comment, Ed, it's Liza. This is probably terrible to be adding to the budget here, but I think it would be great if the board would consider doing a universal kindergarten screen for dyslexia. And I know it's expensive. I know they do it only for ELP right now, but I think down the road it would create a lot of efficiencies and save money and time and resources. So I think that's something that I hope that they will consider going forward in the next budget cycle.
Do you want to ask that as a question? What would that cost to add?
I think that maybe someone from CDSP already asked the question. They came back and said that their kindergarten staff was, well equipped to flag any learning issues. I think it'd be really great for kindergartners. I know a lot of districts do this, and I think it's really helpful. Saves a lot of, I think, time and energy and suffering on behalf of the students and parents. So I think if that's something that the district would want to consider going forward, I think it would be wonderful.
Okay, anything else? Anyone else with comments on the elementary schools?
I have just one comment. When I'm looking at the resources for elementary school classes, I think what's consistent across the elementary schools, and we did ask this during the budget meeting, is why there's such a modest amount of dedicated resources for the gifted program. It is effectively a different type of special needs program. So I'm wondering why there is not as much of a priority placed on that.
Well, Meg, I think I asked that question. I mean, I don't think they answered it yet, but what I had asked them, is it supply based or demand based? Like I'm assuming it's a bit of a competitive program. You have to sort of qualify to get in, but are we turning kids away from it, or are you kind of asking or suggesting that it should be a larger program? Or, I mean, I guess I thought we were sort of serving all who wanted to go to it. So the FTE was driven by the number of people that were in the program.
I'm not sure. In fact, and this could be completely inaccurate, so I apologize in advance if you know for a fact that I am wrong.
I do not.
But I thought the whole reason for denying a number of kids was because of lack of resources. So I thought it was.
No. I think that the reason that they have certain levels of achievement or behavior that they're looking for, and the children who achieve that are in the program. I don't think it has anything to do with how many resources or how many teachers they have, unless the program has changed a lot. But they do have qualifying test scores. And a few years ago, or a number of years ago, they opened the testing to include everybody at various grade levels. It used to be just based on recommendation and then testing. But I don't think that the program is turning people away because they don't have enough resources or enough teachers.
What do you mean by resources? Money?
Well, I don't know what Liza meant. I would support what Liza said about the screening for dyslexia. I think that would be a very good idea. As to why if they need more stuff for the gifted program, that's a separate question, and whether they're turning people away.
So the gifted program, I mean, all right, I joke, like my daughter tested into the IDEA program, and back then when she did it in elementary school, it was all language based, and that was her forte. Whereas kids who were very math and science focused, but not necessarily great at like the reading and writing, which is what the IDEA test was focused on, didn't get in. They didn't test in. So I thought the whole deep dive into the IDEA program was to look at like which kids are we missing. Like to me, gifted, the district has defined gifted in a very narrow way, and I thought the deep dive was to expand who they consider gifted. So gifted program has never been understaffed, and kids have never been turned away. It's just been a matter of who's testing into it.
And I think the recommendation of Teresa Rangel, I think her name was, who gave a presentation in the summer, was that yes, there is an opportunity for addressing kids with math,
right. Which it has not done in the past. It's never done.
But that was one of the possible recommendations, as was not having it at lunch at the middle school. But anyway, I think.
But maybe the for Meg's original question, which was, hey, why is there, just one FTE? I mean, I guess I was trying to phrase that more for the administration to kind of explain how they got what is the process they're using to figure out the resources that they need.
Did you see Jan's hand is up? Did you see Jan Raymond was?
Yes. I just wanted to go a little farther, Clara, with what you said. And again, my information may be dated, but I think I'm right about this. Whereas it used to be that you were recommended by a teacher to take the test. Then it changed to be other ways of testing. And I believe it still is now, you as a student can recommend that you get tested. So anyone is available, anyone can be tested, but you have to have there's an entry level. The other thing is that the reason that ours was language-based is because that was what the school decided they were able to handle. And back in the olden days, that's basically where everybody was. That's where all our peers' schools were. And then the math and science thing is obviously a completely different way of information gathering, learning, studying. So the two really require, if you're going to have a math and science based one, it's a different program than the traditional gifted program that Darien has, which is definitely language and reading and inquiry based in those areas.
The gifted program is part of the special education budget, and there's always enormous demands, as we well know. And I think that's the bottom line.
What did you say? Say it again.
The gifted program is part of the special education budget, and the demands on that budget are enormous.
Right, but we are required by law to provide the education that is suited to the kid. And that's
But
where
there's more need to suit the kid in the special ed program for special ed students that are not in the gifted program.
But again, but sorry, but just to try and sum this up to move to the next, but I think there's really the question here is this program, is there more demand for this program that the administration is providing? Like, certainly it was not something that I had thought of until Meg raised the question. So I think that's really just the question, I think.
well, what I was trying to say, Ed, what I was trying to say is the law requires us to, if you test into the program, as I understand the law, it's a part of the special education requirements that we meet the needs of that student. So as I understand it, we would be in violation of standards if someone tested into the program and then we said, sorry, you can't be in it. Just the same way if someone was diagnosed as being dyslexic and we said, sorry, we're going to.
I don't think it's.
The law is that you have to identify the children. You do not have to provide services.
Okay, well, that's a change.
That is the law. And apparently that was repeated in the report that Teresa Rangel did during the summer. But I don't think that, Darien offers services to kids who test into the program. They don't turn some people down who test in and,
No, many school systems do not have a gifted program. I don't think there's a law that you have to have gifted programs.
But you have to identify children. That is the law.
I don't think the idea
If you
program
have
is
the
under
program,
special ed at all.
Pardon?
That I don't think the idea program is under special ed.
Right.
No, it is. It is a
But
type of.
guys, can I just, sorry,
This is
we're just
long
from
enough.
the standpoint of just trying to get questions on the budget to the
We've got a
administration.
long ways to go. We don't
Yeah.
need to be sorting this out.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else on the elementary schools? Okay. RC 11, athletics.
This Liza, I just wanted to say I richly support adding the coach for freshman field hockey. I feel like these kids, the more extracurriculars we can offer them, whether it's sports, theater, music, after the last couple of years they've had, I think that is essential for everyone's well-being. And I think that we should be richly supporting girls' sports, and we don't have a second assistant for any girls' programs at the moment. So I would say I strongly support that one.
I agree. Yeah.
100% agree with you.
Yeah.
For sure.
All
I'd just like
right.
to add, though, that, this isn't a board thing or a budget thing. I would love to see in the future, the administration set a policy for athletics where I'm kind of tired of the coach gets to decide how many kids they can have on a team. That's like saying a teacher should be able to decide how many kids are in a classroom. I think we need to have a policy across all sports because some sports cut, some don't. And a lot of it actually depends on how many kids are trying out. There have been years where I had a field hockey player. There have been years where freshman field hockey had heavy cuts freshman year. There have been years where every kid made it because they just didn't have enough girls who tried out. And then what happens is on sophomore year, the sophomore class, especially for field hockey, has been devastated where, 15 girls will get cut. So the question that was asked regarding what will happen the second year was an excellent one because there's only one JV coach for field hockey. So I really think the district as a whole, and it's not a board thing, needs to really have a consistent policy across all of the sports so that there is some kind of equity in terms of that kind of thing and not leaving it up to the individual coaches.
Teresa, I think I was going to make the comment that we got through athletics without having the no cut discussion, but
But it seems like they're adding a coach for that reason.
But I recall that we did push this last year, as did some members of the Board of Ed, and they did have the discussion, and they settled on, they came up with, whether it was policy or practice, it's something that maybe not everybody agrees with, but they left it alone, as is a coach that gets to decide. So it's, you know, I mean, it is what it is, but like.
Is it worth just sort of nudging it again and just asking that question again?
Well, Megan, I mean, we can nudge it again, but like, to be, you know, fair, this is like, yes, any point you want to make, but it's not necessarily, we're not taking a vote on it, right? I mean, in other words, it's that I've been watching this every year. I don't know that the athletic director or the principal or whoever is gonna, you know, make a change, because they've got these coaches who get paid what, like $6,000 and put in an incredible amount of time. And so at the end of the day, like, I'm assuming they do it this way for a reason. I would certainly support adding coaches wherever there is demand, but okay. Anything else on athletics? Maintenance? Music? Art? Technology, except not bring your own devices? Okay, I think I guess the one comment that I had myself here, just because it was about the FTE, but I'm gonna just really leave that to the end and talk about FTEs then. Administration, 17 health.
I have one quick one on administration. I maybe Clara or Jan, you can help me with this, but the administration broke down the dues and memberships for us. It was a question from someone, and evidently we have a $17,000 check that we write to CABE, which I guess is Connecticut Association of Boards of Education. Does anyone know what that is? That feels like a lot of money. That would pay for Genius Hour.
No, I could answer a little bit. The dues have gone up a lot. They used to be 10,000, but CABE offers a lot of services to boards of education. And I don't know if you watch when they have the retreat, one of the attorneys from CABE comes in and advises about various questions that have come up. They also are a lobby group. So they go to Hartford and lobby for various issues. And they also provide a lot of information on policy to the Board of Ed. So whether it's worth 17,000 or 12,000, I don't know, but they do offer a lot of service. I was going to also point out, well, go ahead. I think Jan had her hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I was on the Board of Ed so long ago, I think we have to go back centuries, but CABE came up at almost every single year. And I think the same questions have been asked every year, because each year it's a big dollar amount given the year that the dues are in, whether in terms of percentage, it's probably the same over time. But I have to agree with Sarah that this is an important thing. I mean, with Clara, I said Sarah, didn't I? Clara.
You did, but that's right.
Yeah,
thank you. Because I was just unclear.
Yeah.
I brought this up at public comment the other night. Dues for CES, which is Cooperative Educational Services, which is going to oversee the possible open choice program, $5,800 plus an amount for the administration. And the Board of Ed should have a representative on the CES council. It appears that the seat is vacant. And so I would just like to put in a plug for, please get a representative. They only meet once a month, and maybe even they meet on Zoom now. But to have that position vacant is really a problem for Darien, because they don't get information that they should be getting about what's going on, what services are offered through CES. So
I was their CES rep for a long time.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
And I agree with Clara. It is an important place. You get a lot of information. And part of the thing I think that's so interesting about it is you get a lot of information about things that are going on in other districts and issues that they're having, and can bring them back to see if what we're doing on those same issues. So
Maybe one of you wants to volunteer for the seat.
Well, you have to be on the Board of Ed, and we got the T-shirt. We've done that. So.
yeah.
Okay.
I'm going
Okay.
to be on CES again, but I don't think I'm going to be on the board again.
Okay. Okay, 17 health. At one point I was just gonna make here was on the nursing allocation. Like, I know someone, this was again talked about at the board, but I think there should just be consistency throughout the budget. So if they want to reclass special ed nurses into nursing, fine. But then I think that should be a philosophy that flows throughout the budget. I think if they are going to present items grouped that way, then there should be some effort, like there is with the operational detail, where they look at, you know, certain expenditures across functions. And I think this was Tara's point. She's still going to want to look at special ed costs. So again, I think my point would just be whatever methodology they wish to adapt, it should be reflected throughout the budget and not just one department one way, another department another way. Anything else on health? Personnel? Curriculum? Finance? Library? Technology education? Summer school?
Can we just go back to library just for a minute? Okay.
Yeah, I know I'm clipping through them, so yeah, no.
I was going by numbers. Okay, but remember Libraries Reimagined? That was something they talked about last year. I don't hear anything about it now, and I don't know whether there's any cost to it that might be in the budget. I'm surprised that there isn't any reference to it this year.
I thought there was an upcoming meeting on that where there was going to be a presentation, and I'm not sure why I'm thinking that is the case.
Because it's in the answers to the questions we got. So yes, I believe it's going to be in a curriculum discussion. It was in the answers that we got.
All right.
That's why it sounds that way, Ed.
Yeah, but on Clara's point, like, does that mean that there's not going to be a cost to it? It's just not, or it's just not this year. It's just there's no cost to it this year because this is all part of the capital development.
I don't know. I guess we could ask, but we could wait for the meeting.
Yeah, okay. 22, technology education. 23, summer school. 24, special ed.
I had one thing, the numbers have increased, and that's not surprising, probably due to a lot of things. But Darien is getting that $6.4 million from the ARPA, and I wonder if the school district can apply for some of those funds to help with some of the learning gaps that may have happened due to COVID.
Didn't in the last presentation or in the Super Saturday, I don't remember, they mentioned that those COVID funds, they had very specific guidelines on what they could fund and they couldn't. And they were evaluating, I don't remember what it was that they were evaluating if they could use for, I don't remember what it was, but it was something. But I do understand that those funds have like very specific regulations from the state about where they can be used or what they can be used for or not. So I don't know if yeah.
I also heard that, there's a committee kind of looking for places to spend the money. So I guess I would just hope that if this is a possibility, somebody could address it because it's a lot of money.
Get the impression it was allowed to be used for the schools specifically, those ARPA funds. I don't know. It's a good question, but I thought it was supposed to be used like maybe for small businesses or like things like that.
Maybe that's too. It's a lot of money though.
I'm sure it'll go very quickly.
We can ask John Zagrodsky. He will have an answer immediately, I would think.
Okay, anything else on special ed?
I do have one sort of a general question because this is such, this is 20% of the entire education budget, basically. So I was just wondering, do we have an idea, like some sort of audit of how much, like how many children on average the psychologists are seeing on a daily or weekly basis? And having a person available is one thing, but having a person who's needed constantly is an entirely different. So I'm just curious if we have sort of an audit for that version of that.
Yeah, well, maybe would it make sense to ask a question about like the metrics that they're using? I recall an answer where this may have been about the counselor, or may have been about the psychologist, but they were talking about like how many meetings they have to have per cycle. I don't remember whose question it was.
Okay.
And I know Peter.
They did a really detailed presentation about this when they added the elementary school psychologists. Was that last fall or the budget season before that? 2 years ago now?
I think it was 2 years.
2 years ago now. They did a very detailed presentation. I'm sure they still have it, but it goes through and it shows, like, at least with respect to elementary school, what they do during the day, exactly why they were needed, how their schedules were broken out. And it was extremely informative and very detailed. So if we can get our hands on that, which shouldn't be an issue, that would be helpful for Meg.
Thanks, Liza.
Okay, 25 fixed expenses. 26 early learning. Okay, we've got nothing in COVID. So if anyone has sort of commentary in the object detail, we could talk about that now. And if not, just move into open choice. Okay. So with that, not for no other reason than the order I wrote them down on my notepad, do folks want to sort of raise specific questions on open choice that have not been raised already? I feel this is a big enough topic that if people just want to talk about it, pros or cons, that's also worth doing.
Well, I'll start something off if that makes
Sure.
sense. As I was talking to Ed earlier in the week, and I just wanted to say and let you all know that I am in favor of open choice, and that many of the arguments that I've been hearing against open choice are very similar to the arguments that I heard when we went to the ABC program. Now, ABC is not a publicly financed program, but the girls that are in ABC do the same thing as some of these open choices. They take up a seat, they require teacher time, they require all of the same things in the school on the day-to-day basis that any other kids require. So I am trying to put aside the arguments that have come up about the day-to-day costs being different from the ABC girls, because it's not. I also wanted to point out that for all the opposition that existed to going with the ABC program all those many years ago, it went so well in its early days that they increased the size of it. And I understand, I was a board member. I understand from a recent board member that if they had the opportunity and space, they would increase it more than that. So I just want to say that I think we have not a same scenario, but a similar scenario where we're bringing students from outside the district into our schools who may not have the experiences academically or socially as the people that they'll be sharing classrooms with. And I would argue that it's been a tremendous success. Or we wouldn't still have it, but we do, and I think it reflects well on our community, and I think it's been helpful for the girls. So that's my general philosophical view on, and I just thought I'd put it out there, so you all know where I stand.
Thanks. Thank
On
you.
the other hand, we don't receive any funding from the state for ABC. So that's a completely separate program that it's private, that we receive $0 from anybody besides ABC and all the people that
I'm
volunteer
not
and
sure
fund
now
the
whether or
program.
not they're getting per pupil expenditure. I suspect they probably are, but I really can't speak anymore to the how the finances work, but I know how ABC works.
Yeah, and one of my questions that I had was, well, if it was a money issue, whether we could raise money to support it in the same way that people raise money to put lights up or resurface a field or whatever else. I don't know if the school could take a gift to support the program or not.
I don't know. That's a good one.
I have a few reasons why I have my hesitation with open choice, and it's actually not about funding. My hesitation is, the way that it's being presented. So I'm obviously a person of color, my kids are, and for us, diversity really comes from people's experience. And, just the idea that this initiative is being presented to the district as an opportunity for our kids in Darien to have exposure to diversity, I think is a bit far-fetched. It's a bit far-fetched because even if you had, let's say you had 16 kids coming in kindergarten, and then every year we had 16 kids coming in, then from kindergarten through grade 12, that's only 250 something kids out of a student body of over 4,500 kids. That's a drop in the bucket. That's like 4% or something. So is that really exposing our kids to that, or is it just making us feel better? And I think one of the points that, one of the parents had raised is because it's a lottery and you're taking from Norwalk, where you also have a very prestigious area of Rowayton there too. It's not to say that you won't have one or two students who are coming from Rowayton. So is it really a different socioeconomic person coming into the district, really taking advantage of the resources here that they couldn't get at home in Rowayton? So, I would rather, offer that as a scholarship program to kids who really don't have the privilege to be here. And, that it's not lottery, but it's, selected on merit. Like if we had kids who had to apply, who are academically astute, but because of personal circumstances are not able to have a public school education that is as rich and endearing as Darien's, then I would love those kids to come, and I would find it very difficult to believe that Darien residents as a whole would have a problem with that. I think it's the fact that this seems so random walk in the selection that, you have a kid potentially from Rowayton, or you have someone who's going to come and not really be loyal to Darien or not be able to participate in any athletics after school, which is really when the social bonding and the cultural integration actually happens. So, that's where my hesitation with the program is. I think it's well-meaning and it's well-intentioned, but I'm not sure that it's really constructive for some of the initiatives that we have.
Sorry. Can I just, because we're not in a room and I'm only looking at, can we go? I saw Carolina's hand, so I called it. And can I just ask, speak once and then let the next person go to if you've spoken before?
So what I was going to say is that my understanding of open choice is that once the kid first starts in kindergarten, so I don't really know how you measure in kindergarten, if the kid is really smart or not, or I don't know how that works. So and they will all start in kindergarten, and they would move through the school, years when they start growing the program. So the kindergartens will go into first grade, and we will get new Ks and new Ks and new Ks every year. One. And then the second, to me, once you are a Darien student in kindergarten, you are a Darien student and you can participate in sports or extracurriculars or any of that. There is no not allowing the open choice kids to not participate. I mean, they become Darien students and therefore they can participate in sports and extracurriculars and all the stuff we offer any other Darien student. So they're not different than any other Darien student. They just happen to not live in Darien. That's all.
Teresa?
One, I would argue that every kindergartner is academically qualified to enter the Darien schools. I don't know what kind of test you would give a kindergartner to determine whether or not they are. And then the argument I keep hearing about Rowayton fascinates me. I live on the Rowayton line. My taxes are lower than some of the houses in Rowayton. And I think it's interesting when people say that. Rowayton is not a cheap part of Norwalk. I mean, so if the people who live in Rowayton wanted to send their kids to Darien schools, I would argue that a good chunk of them could afford to move over the line and live in Darien. That argument really just doesn't sit well with me when people keep saying that. I mean, that I'm very much for open choice. I do volunteer with the ABC program. I know all of those girls. I drive them, and I think they are so amazing. I love talking to them. They all have such amazing backgrounds, and to see I give them so much credit. These girls do not live at home. They live in a community that, where they do kind of stand out, unfortunately. And the way they get themselves involved at the high school, they do more at that high school than I think either of my kids have done or do. They are such an asset to this community. So I just wanted to throw that in there too.
Clara?
I just wanted to say, based on what I have read, we don't necessarily take kids every year. So they would start with the 16 kids, and then, maybe they would take 16 more the next year, but maybe they would wait a year. So the whole idea of compounding how many people you're going to have by the time they get to high school, we have to wait on that. That's just a fact that I wanted to put out there. I hope that also that we take our time with it so that once the kids are here, they're here. I mean, they're not the ones who pushed over the section or, any kid can do that. So I hope that, as someone said, they're Darien kids once they come here. So I just hope that this whole program is mapped out in Darien pretty well before it begins. And I would also like to see what is going on, say, in New Canaan or other surrounding towns that might also be sending kids. I mean, my kids come from Stamford, or why did they pick Norwalk? Just a little more information. And I think the Board of Ed is going to have a little more information passed out at a meeting. So I look forward to that.
Anyone else? Oh, Liza?
I just wanted to say I support the program. I think it sounds fantastic. And my only concerns would be about breaking the kindergarten section. And I do feel like we have to critically evaluate what's happening with our incoming kindergarten classes, because I know enrollment projections there's a lot to consider. So that would be my only concern. I think it's a great opportunity for the district.
Thanks. Cassie?
Sorry, I lowered my hand because I think the question may have just gotten answered. Was it solidified that the kids were all coming from Norwalk? Did I miss that? I've heard that mentioned a lot, but is that definitely?
That's in the documentation that the program,
Okay.
that there are 50 kids from Norwalk that are going to be split among the 4 towns.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Essentially.
Anyone else? Okay, I just a question that I had, which maybe they're going to cover this, but I think that the assumption needs to be that 16 kids are going to tip a section at some point, meaning even if it's not the 16 kids in kindergarten, it's 16 kids when they get to 2nd grade. So I think when I guess I would be asking for the administration to sort of present more of a fully burdened cost. Like, okay, if we tip this section, that is going to cost another teacher, and that is such and such. And we can have not necessarily a budget for how this is going to look in 10 years, but I do think it's a good program, and obviously people have been supportive over it as it's come up over the past year. I just would like to kind of have a sense of that cost, and in particular, I'm not really focused on, okay, is Middlesex at capacity from these kids, but that's like a bigger question in general, the whole capacity question.
Ed, I want to just bring up that Paul Hendrickson, who's on our Board of Finance, who is a finance director in Ridgefield. I'm not 100% sure, but another
I
town.
think it's Trumbull.
Trumbull, sorry.
I think it might be Trumbull.
Yeah, that has open choice. He has made a comment publicly that there's virtually no cost associated with this. Now, I understand your thing about the sections, and I would like to, have that explored, but he has come out and said that.
But I get, in my position, it would be, okay, it's $80,000, it's $80,000. Like, I just would rather not be talking about in 2 years why, we add a teacher and someone says, as Clara said, it's not that kid that's tipped a section. It's just, so I'm not looking at it as a cost to say, oh, therefore we shouldn't do it. I think it's something we should spend the money on. And if we don't want to spend the money on it, then I think we should raise the money.
Right.
As I think it's worth doing, but.
When we talk about breaking sections later on beyond kindergarten, I think it's unfair to blame the open choice kid who has already been in the district, say, since kindergarten as the cause of a section breaking than maybe a person who moves to Darien. If
Totally
we're considering the Darien kids, they're Darien.
That's what we said.
Yeah, they didn't break the section later on.
No.
Like suggesting the ABC kids break a section.
Right, Jan.
Totally agree. Yeah, no, I agree. But this is why, like, if we were talking about, I hope when P&Z, whoever it is that's looking at, allowing 100 units to come in, they think about, well, what is this going to cost to educate these students? It's not $23,000, but it's not the cost of books and supplies either. I mean, there's a number. I mean, whatever it is, that I just think that's a problem in general with budgeting. People tend to not be so, in some cases, they're very precise with the numbers that we're budgeting here. It's going to cost us $4,277 more to do this next year than it did this year. But I think a lot of times we're missing things. Any other comments on open choice?
No, but I like your dog.
Cat.
Oh, it's a cat. Oh, I like
It's
your
a cat. I think it's a cat.
Double tail.
Yeah.
Sorry,
It
Ed.
appears to be a cat.
I wouldn't insult your cat by calling him a dog.
Yeah. Okay. If there's nothing else on open choice, bring your own device. Any comments?
You really want to go there?
I'm surprised. I thought I was waiting for you, Teresa. I knew you were.
Waiting for me, but you told me specifically you didn't want to talk about it, so I kept my mouth shut. But if you're asking, I'm very much against bringing your own device. I think people should be able to opt in and buy their device if people should be able to opt in and get a device from the district if they want. That's my take.
I would like to see them look into a mass purchase, say a particular company, that would give a deal to Darien students. I mean, that might be better because then everybody would have the same thing if that's possible. And then maybe it would be easier to manage that as teachers want to do presentations or things like that. I mean, it seems like it's worth a try or at least a look.
Yeah. Look, my own 2 cents.
What do you mean? Don't they buy en masse for all the iPads for the school and all on the Chromebooks? I don't know.
Well, I guess I got the impression from the discussion that everybody would be told, go buy your own computer. And some people would buy an Apple and some people would buy, an IBM. So I guess what I'm saying is if they had some standardization and then they could approach a provider and say, we want to buy 2,000 computers, then the pricing might go down and it would be easier to manage the program that way. I mean, I
don't think it's they're asking everybody to go buy your own computer. That what they're assuming is that everybody at home has a computer it's not like, go buy 2,000 computers. It's
No,
more
not
like
necessarily, but
kids already have them.
I guess some people do already have them and they'd have to work that out. But I think that what they're looking at is as a program where there's going to be a lot of variation in what people have if they bring their own stuff. And somewhere along the line, they should try to do something to standardize it before finding out that, it's not working if you have this computer is old or, it seems like there's a lot that has to be done here rather than just say, go buy your own stuff or go bring your own stuff.
I'm with Teresa. I'm kind of against the bring your own device, but on the other hand, I did hear them say that most everything now is web-based, so it wouldn't be an issue with the devices that they have if one has Apple and the other one has Chrome or whatever it is. So that wouldn't be an issue. Years ago, yes, it would have been an issue because things were not web-based, but nowadays is web-based, so that wouldn't be an issue.
Well, and I guess another question is, in a public school, do you ask people to, or do you sort of demand that people spend a lot of money on something like that? I mean, we had a discussion at some point and implemented pay to play, and it was very unpopular. It didn't last, but it was that whole question of should a person in a public school be asked to outlay a lot of money for something? And I think that's something they have to wrestle with and come to a conclusion.
Yeah, but just Clara, I don't know whether you sort of see it or not. We all spend a lot of money on buses, and a bunch of people don't take the bus or don't have the right to take the bus. I thought that the administration deserved a little bit of credit, maybe more than a little bit of credit for, this is a program that, was a previous superintendent's program. And so, the administration is basically saying, we've been running this for a few years, technology changes, the program needs to change. And I'm not saying that what they presented is necessarily the right thing, but I think it's probably whatever they presented is there were going to be someone who is against it for some reason or another. So, maybe this is for sure something that's a bit iterative, and what they're going to talk about tomorrow will, tomorrow will change. But I don't know. I kind of look at it as that it's right to change the program to accomplish what they what they want to accomplish, and whether it is bulk purchasing or some other way to handle folks who don't want to buy devices. I certainly don't think it's a good idea for the school to be spending money on iPads that students don't want to use.
No, I don't think so either, but.
Can I ask?
I think that it's good to have a choice. I can assure you that iPad being given back to the district by my son isn't by no means in as good condition as it was when he got it his freshman year. And I would hate for that to have been something that I owned, quite frankly.
Can I ask what being video-based means and why that makes it all so much easier?
Web, not video, web-based. You
Web-based.
Yeah. So it's literally you type an address in the website and then you can type it, it's not sitting in your computer, the material, you access it through the internet, and that's web-based.
It's kind of like how we're using Zoom. You could be using this on an iPhone,
Okay.
Google phone, whatever. Yeah.
All right, that's so obvious that I didn't think it had such a specific name. Okay, thank you.
Do we know, is the district still planning to send out a survey and find out what the interest is as far as students and families going forward, whether they would prefer to buy their own or be given a device? I know they discussed that, but I, for one, am really looking forward to hearing more about it, because I have a lot of feelings on both ways. I mean, I have 5 kids, so the idea of buying 5 computers is a little daunting, but I also feel like if there's a lot of inefficiency and waste with what they're currently buying, then we shouldn't be doing that. And whether we're buying them as a district up front or, individually, you're either paying your property taxes and buying the computer that way. Obviously it's spread out amongst all of us, but I feel as though we should be doing what's most efficient and most desired by the students and their families and the teachers. And I'm really looking forward to hearing more about it. I'm not sure at this point. I need to know more.
And Lisa, I think this is the bring your own device is only for DHS. It's not for all the kids.
Exactly.
And I didn't get the impression they're gonna like claw back the existing iPads. So I think it's actually even more so. I think it's a good idea to ask current students, are you using the device that we gave you? And then you really have to let the current 8th graders, you should really be surveying the current 8th graders in what they think.
Right. I agree. And you know, just in passing, when I speak with folks about this, I feel like a lot of the responses I get is that folks don't want to use an iPad. They'd rather have a laptop to do their work. And I don't know, I mean, maybe it's just a problem with the hardware that we've been purchasing. Just a guess. I don't know. But I don't know if that's part of the survey. You know, would you want a device if it was A, B, or C rather than an iPad? I don't know what they're asking.
So I agree with the idea of opting in, but I do think, you know, standardizing freshman year is kind of important. It's already a big leap to move from middle school to high school. Having varied forms of technology to access information, I think would be a challenge potentially.
Cassie?
Hi. Sorry, you're all in my bedroom. I actually have COVID right now,
Oh.
but
Glad you're virtual.
First, I had to get all the kids to bed, but I guess, you know, I'm pretty open to it. I think one of my concerns is for people who decide, listen, I think there, of course, should be an option for a standardized device if you want one. But then my question is, what is that option? And for whether it's a lot of people who opt in or a few, you know, I wouldn't want it to be some sort of antiquated device, like let's say the iPads they have now, 5 years, 6 years from now are no longer relevant and they're going to be slow and the operating systems are just like not going to be the same. You know, when I look at some of the hardware that I have you know, I have a small IT company, and when I look at some of the hardware and how quickly they go through it in 3 or 4 years and how quickly they need to upgrade, I just don't want anyone to be in a disadvantage if they decide to not buy their own device.
Thanks. Anyone else on the bring your own device? Okay. I think one other sort of general comment before, maybe won't be so long before we go to the capital budget, but just for those who watched the finance and budget committee meeting, there was quite a lot of discussion around the overall increase in budget growth, in particular the the number of FTEs. So I think you know, I wanted to let people have the chance to comment on that as well, if they had particular points that they wanted to express. So does anyone want to talk about the overall size of the budget and the rate of growth from last year?
Well, I mean, 2.5% of it is contractual, right? So we have no choice on that.
I would agree with you on the contractual, but we do have a choice because you can change. Not saying that you know you're going to do this, but you know, if you run a business and your union contract causes you to increase costs by this, well, if you don't have the revenue coming in, you got to find something else to do. In this case, I don't want to say the revenue is viewed as infinite, but it's a tax base. So we fund whatever the bill is.
Yeah.
So it's really just that. I mean, because if you start, this is something when you sort of look at the demographer, like if you roll out 4 or 5% a year, now we're in a year with higher inflation, at a certain point your property taxes have doubled. So.
Yeah, I think I think, you know, a lot of the stuff that's been presented in this year's budget, some of it is, I mean, I'm a firm supporter of anything that helps to aid in the mental health of our kids. I think this has been a very trying 2 years. I'm not saying anything by any means of revelation in saying that, but so I'm in big support of that, but there's a lot of superfluous stuff in there too, I feel, or things that could be held off until another date. And I mean, $110 million budget is staggering by any metric, okay, by any metric. And I just wonder, I mean, we moved to Darien in 2010, and I wonder how much better the schools have become in 10 years. Meanwhile, our education budget has blown up. So at some point, there is the law of diminishing returns. It is applying now. And I wonder if, 15 grand here, 7 grand there, on its own, they seem like really small amounts, drops in the bucket. But again, it's continuous, it's every year. And it's, there's the argument that if we don't use the money that we have, then we're overtaxing our residents. So we have to use the money. But then, if we use the money, then you can justify increasing the budget and the tax base. So it's just, I don't know. I feel like there needs to be, aside from the contractual obligations, I feel like if it's not a necessary expense, but it'd be nice to have expense, we need to really seriously consider if it needs to be done in this budget cycle. I mean, increasing the budget year on year by 4% is pretty big. That's it. That's my only.
So yeah, Carolina.
I think she's
Sorry,
muted.
yeah, I just unmuted. I actually find that the budget, I don't see any fluff. Yes, there are increases of $5,000 here, $7,000 there. I don't think that Dr. Adley has presented us a budget that has fluff or things that are, would like to have. On the other hand, I find that the increase is in hand with inflation as well. And I have not, since I joined the RTM 6 years ago, or how many years ago, and 5 years that I've been in education, all the increases have been actually pretty in line with what inflation has been. So I don't see an extraordinary increase. Yes, it's a big number. 110 million is a big number. But if you compare we are right in the middle, smack in the middle. We're not the most expensive ones at all. We're literally smack right in the middle. So I do think we have been overtaxed, and we have a general fund that is overfunded, which is a completely different issue. But that is a fact. So, and that's another conversation for another day. But yes, there is monies in the town that we have all contributed to that are just sitting there, probably gaining nothing because interest rates are at nothing too. But I don't think that this is a fluffy budget at all. I think it's a pretty reasonable budget.
Just to put it in perspective, I'm just looking a really quick Google search. 2005, the Darien education budget was $56 million. So in a very short period of time, it's essentially doubled. So
I think we need to look at how many students we have in
I know our enrollment has
and how many students we have in 2022. So I think on a per student basis, I don't think the increase has been that extraordinary.
And I was
Yeah,
just,
well, sorry, go ahead. Yeah, yep, sorry.
I was just going to say that the idea of putting something off into the next budget cycle doesn't necessarily mean that we aren't going to have the same discussion about the same item the following year. So my comment would be, if there's something that someone wants to cut because they don't think we're going to need it, or they don't see we're going to need it for the next decade, that's one thing. But if we're putting it off till next year just because it costs $5,000 and we want to spend the $5,000 next year, then we better have a pretty good reason for why we need it next year, but not this year. And to me, I agree that we have an overinflated general fund, but I don't think that necessarily has anything to do with what we're talking about now. And I wish we could do, I was on F&B last year. I wish we could do something about the general fund.
Okay, anyone, I think, Janet, that's a good point on, whether we're just kicking the can down the road and for what reason. Is there anyone else who wants to make a sort of general comment on the budget size? Okay, I'm gonna just for myself, I sort of have a general view that it's, the administration, the board, they decide sort of how we're spending this money. If for as long as I've been on this committee, have, sort of focused on the total dollars. So that's still kind of what I look at, and I would not taking a position on this program or that program, but I certainly, it feels like it's an awfully large increase, and I feel it's, some of it is just driven by FTEs, and I guess I look at things differently, if it's, direct educational expense or, or administration. But that's my general comment. Does anyone else have any other comments on whether it's this or the budget in overall before we move to the capital budget? Okay, last tab in the book. Okay, so again, as a reminder on the capital budget, when we go through this process, there is more of a, there is a line item approach. Peter did ask the question about historical items, and this is certainly, the capital budget is certainly an area where things that are in a given year may have been deferred from a prior year. So I again, we'll go by school. So if we want to talk about the high school, anyone have particular comments on the capital plan? And I would say any of the projects on here, including if they're 5 years out. Okay, I don't want to rush. I'm also cognizant, I may not be the only person that didn't spend a lot of time looking in detail at the capital items. So I'm kind of letting us page flip these at a relatively.
And I'll just say, I felt like a lot of them, it's Teresa, I read through it. And first of all, I want to say this publicly. I think Mike Lynch is the most underpaid member of our district. He is amazing. He keeps all 8 of our buildings in amazing shape. But anyway, I felt like a lot of these projects, everything seems safety related for the most part, and I'm always for that. So I feel like the way Mike laid this all out over the next 5 years, I mean, as usual, I think he did a great job. It's about staying ahead of stuff before it turns into, remember the Oxford gym years ago?
Yeah.
That was like a safety hazard, and they kept putting it off. And I feel like that's not happening right now with the way some of these projects are laid out.
The new Oxford gym is going to be pretty nice.
Yeah.
What happened with the security booth at the high school? What happened with that project that we had for a couple of years? I don't know. It kind of disappeared. I don't know what happened.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Yeah, I don't remember either. That's what I'm kind of asking. I'm like, I know there was, conversations for a couple of years, and then the study, and then I have no idea what happened to it. Anybody remembers that have been in the committee?
I remember that it was in, but I don't remember what happened to it.
I felt like that was a Dr. Brenner thing, and then it went away.
Was it that long?
Huh? Yeah.
I guess I have sort of two general comments on the capital items. So one is we talked about it. So the reimagining the libraries. Why is this not in? This does not appear to be in here even as a placeholder for the elementary schools. And then the other question, which is really about the forward capital projects, given the relatively low costs of our borrowing as a town compared to where interest rates may be going in the future, does it make sense to pull forward any of the capital items where we would see a cost savings? And there may not be any, but I'm just thinking, whether we save money on it's because it's a utility upgrade, or we save money because it's reduced maintenance. It was as concerned as I would be about the sort of total spend on the operating side. It might be efficient for us to bring things forward if it's going to save us in the long run.
I think that would be a good suggestion or a good question.
Does anyone else have particular questions or comments on any part of the capital budget?
Ed, I was gonna say, when you look at, well, let me find the page when I was looking at it before. When they take all the totals for all of the buildings and they lay it out over 5 years, except for like 1 year, he's really made it very even overall on how much we're spending from a capital perspective. There's one off year where it's very low, but for the most part, it's like a 2.8 million capital budget each year, You're
saying that's by design?
I feel like it is by design, because I know in the past, F&B and even the Board of Finance have wanted the district to kind of like spread things out. So it's not like 1 year we're spending this much and then the following year we're spending like next to nothing. And it seems very spread out and even for the most part, which I think is what we've, not us in particular, but what we've asked for in the past.
Yeah, well, look, obviously the Board of Finance, they got all the experts looking at interest rates and whatever else.
Yeah.
It's anyway.
And plus we have we're in the process of building a building,
new school,
and we are taking all the portables away from the other elementary schools that have them. So we do have a lot going on from a capital perspective.
Yeah. Anyone else? Okay, any other business? And I think if there's anyone who's not on the committee but would like to offer up any comments and is on our in our meeting, I would like to invite you to do so. Okay, not seeing any hands raised. Could I get a motion to adjourn? Teresa, second.
Carolina.
Carolina, thank you. All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Aye, the ayes have it. Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.